his career would continue and get that second one.
And he loses focus when he starts doing bad habits on the floor.
Dragic misses the technical. And a technical foul on Rasheed Wallace. He's gone.
All right, everybody. It's our last dance here on Ball Don't Lie, episode 46. It's been a crazy ride. We started this fall semester of 2019 with, of course, David Green, who was on the podcast last week. So be sure to check that out if you haven't. But now me and Matt Szczypiorski have been holding it down since then. And it's really come full circle, hasn't it?
It really has. And, Hunter, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for bringing me on last spring, I guess. Thanks for bringing me on. At that time, it was just a trial for me, but I guess I passed because I'm still here. So thank you for bringing me on.
Yeah, absolutely. We picked you off of the College of Com streets, gave you a home, and it's been great ever since in your rehabilitation process. But, of course, we're going to go around the association one final time here. A little bit of an interesting on-court incident involving Cleveland Cavaliers forward Kevin Love. So, basically, I'll try my best to describe it, but I do think the video does serve a bit more justice. So, one of the referees in the game passed the ball to Kevin Love, for him to inbound it. And he just basically swatted it inbounds. And then rather than, catching it and just passing it into his teammate, he just slapped it to the ground. OG Anunoby of the Toronto Raptors stole it. And this has led to some controversy. There's been some rumors that sources are actually saying Love was mad at the ref, not his team. But, of course, the Cavs are pretty doo-doo, and they have been since LeBron James has been gone. And then Kevin Love, he has apologized to the team, although he's saying it wasn't because of the team, so I don't really know where this is coming from. And then the Cavs say they are handling it internally. So this franchise has been a mess anytime LeBron James hasn't been on it. So I can't say this is a surprise, Matt, but what's your biggest takeaways from this?
Well, poor guy is stuck in an awful franchise. You said it. I mean, the franchise has been pretty doo-doo, as you said, for pretty much every year. LeBron has not been there since about the early 90s. And I feel like Kevin Love has had an incident like this before, where he's done something, he's had to apologize to the team. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I could have sworn he had an incident kind of like this.
Are you thinking of when he walked off the court because of the whole mental health thing? He had a panic attack. I'm not sure if that's
maybe. I don't know, man. I feel like it was something on. I forget.
Yeah, it's slipping my mind too. God, what basketball analysts are we, right? But yeah, I guess my takes on it. I have no idea what he was mad at. I mean, I don't think it's that big of a deal, to be honest. The fact that they're making it a bigger deal maybe speaks more about them than it does him. Again, you don't want to see that, but at the same time, Kevin Love seems like a pretty stand-up dude for the most part. He's typically not in trouble for really anything. So I can't blame him for being mad about being on the Cavs. I would be too.
Yeah, definitely. Kevin Love, everything he's done for this, for this organization, for this NBA community too, for mental health in terms of that, like you brought up earlier. He's been a really good trailblazer for the NBA and for athletes in general in terms of that. So I think he's a stand-up guy, like you said. This is a really rare outburst for him.
Yeah, absolutely right. Definitely really changed the game in that sense. Shout out to Kevin Love. But sticking into the Midwest region here, we're going to talk about the Minnesota Timberwolves. They did something really, really cool. So they gave the game ball to George Floyd's family, but not from their recent game, but they kept the game ball from the win that they got on the day of the Derek Chauvin guilty conviction. I believe it was Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards, and Joshua Okogie who went over and gave it to them. So obviously really cool. We talked about a bit about the Chauvin trials and stuff like that, and how basketball has just impacted society and things like that more than an athlete, things of that nature. We've never really been afraid to talk about that here on Ball Don't Lie. But what do you think about the gesture, Matt?
Well, I think it's awesome stuff, obviously. And I think it was pretty well timed too, because for them to win that day, the Wolves don't win many games, so it was great timing on their. It was great timing on their part. But like I said, awesome gesture. It's good stuff.
I believe they are mathematically out of the playoffs too. So
I think it was either them or the Rockets that were the first team eliminated last week. I forget.
Yeah, it might have been honestly both at the same time. They were both very, very bad. But we do have some unfortunate news, not breaking news, but unfortunately, the 19-year-old Kentucky standout player, Terrence Clark, lost his life in a car accident Really, really sad. Only 19 years old. He was someone who was entered the NBA draft, was good, almost definitely going to get drafted somewhere. 5-star player coming out of high school from the Boston area. A lot of NBA players and people just around in general really mourning the death of him. Really sad. He sounded like a very nice kid too, very upbeat and stuff. Never met him, of course, but I heard nothing but good things about him and things of that nature, Matt. Unfortunately, I feel like since the podcast has started, we've really lost a lot of people. I remember, having to do the Kobe tribute when that happened. We talked about Elgin Baylor, things like that. But seeing a 19-year-old die in a way like that, this one really hurts.
I mean, yeah, this is a tragic, tragic loss for not only, the NBA, but just the basketball community in general. I mean, he was a huge star in the Boston area, beloved in that area. He was, highly touted as one of the best prospects that Boston has ever produced. So for him to die like that in such a tragic way, such an unfair way to lose his life, it's tragic. And John Calipari was very, very emotional about it on Twitter when he released a statement. It just seemed like it hit a lot of people hard, which is, it says a lot about Terrence Clarke for the fact that he was able to make that kind of an impact on so many people at just 19 years old, hadn't even had a day on an NBA court yet. And he, had this kind of impact on everybody at the age of 19.
Yeah, like you said, Matt, Beantown's not really known as a basketball mecca. Of course, they got the Boston Celtics, but in terms of the high school scene and college scene, it's really nothing there. So it's a lot of, obviously, players coming from other places to go to the Celtics. But Terrence Clarke was a hometown star. The Celtics did honor him pre-game, which was obviously super cool stand-up thing for their organization. And yeah, seeing things like that, it's a shame. Makes you question things and things like that. So shout out to Terrence Clarke and his family. We're mourning for you. We're praying for you. But moving on here, we're going to talk about Russell Westbrook, one of Matt's favorite players in the NBA. He broke Wilt Chamberlain's record. Anytime you break Wilt's record, you at least did something right. For most triple doubles in a month, Russell Westbrook has definitely been talking that smack. Not afraid to hype himself up, saying that there's no player like me and things of that nature. How do you think though that Brody's going to remember, when his career is all said and done?
Well, in my opinion, he'll be the player with the impressive stats and none of the big wins to show for it. For as many bad teams that he's been stuck on, especially this year, he's been on some great ones too, and he has not been able to capitalize on that situation, in my opinion. In terms of Wilt Chamberlain, though, what is he getting triple doubles with? Is that an assist or blocks? That third one.
I think both. Wilt Chamberlain he's a good he was a very good passer. People don't actually give him the credit he deserves. Yeah, Wilt Chamberlain, this dude. I mean, obviously we talk about, always going against plumbers and stuff like that. But the dude was putting them up, man. He dropped 100 in the game. No one's even come close. And that's in today's NBA. So Wilt Chamberlain, no 3-point line either. That dude could hoop. He's probably one of the best athletes, just pure raw athletes. He's in the Volleyball Hall of Fame. He broke the NCAA high jump record and stuff like that. And he was a big dude. Apparently he can bench more than Shaq even could. And things like that. Yeah. And for high jump, because I do have the track background here, you need to be tall and lengthy, but you also gotta be kind of slim and light. And Wilt Chamberlain, not that he wasn't like that, but he was big. He was not a little dude. So for him to get up like that too really shows how athletic you are.
Yeah, I mean, he was an athletic freak. He's one of those players that you talk about where he could literally play in any era. If he played in today's NBA, he would dominate, I think. I think he'd be able to adjust about pretty much any area.
Yeah, I would love to see some of these old school players how they fit in the NBA. I do think Wilt Chamberlain though was one of those once in a generation athletes. He would have figured it out in my opinion. But looking at the Milwaukee Bucks, I thought this was really interesting, and I haven't really seen it get talked about. But I'm glad I was able to fetch this story here. So the Bucks are going to be offering Pfizer shots at the Fiserv Forum, which is where they play, to fans attending Sunday's game. It's only going to be for first dose patients, not second dose. So I guess in 3 weeks, I believe the incubation period is, or whatever you want to call it, they can go back there. I'm assuming because that would make sense. But I don't know, Matt. What do you think about this? I thought it was pretty interesting. And do you think we're going to start seeing a trend, not maybe necessarily this, but that maybe all NBA players or all NBA fans and stuff like that have to get vaccinated to go to games?
Well, I think it's really interesting. I think it's a nice way to get fans attracted to the stadium. I think I think it will be weird though. In 3 weeks, like where do they go after that? Like, do they have another Sunday home game they can give out the second dose at?
That's what
And
I
if
was
so,
wondering, huh?
what happens if people get sick? You start feeling the side effects pretty soon. But
Like,
I
at
don't
the game.
in in terms of vaccination for COVID, I don't think it'll ever be a requirement. Certainly not for the fans or regular citizens. But I don't think it will be required for the NBA either. And here's my take on it. The way the NBA can get around that, though, is by saying, okay, fine, you don't have to get the vaccine. That's your choice, but you still have to follow COVID protocols. So if you don't have the COVID vaccine, you can't leave your hotel, you can't go around the town, you can't do any of that stuff. And I think that could be what gets players vaxxed more than anything else, more than making it a requirement.
Yeah, I personally think that even if you do get vaccinated, like we have seen, like millions of people have gotten vaccinated at this point, even millions have gotten fully at this point. But you still have to follow the guidelines anyway, because you can't just be like walking around with your card like, oh, I'm good. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's definitely got to be twofold and be fair, because you can still get it even if you are vaccinated, and
Hmm.
things like that. But of course, it significantly lessens your chance, and that's why we're giving them out. So yeah, it's hard to say. We saw Rutgers University actually offer, saying, I believe in the fall semester, that they are going to require everybody to get fully vaccinated. Curious to see if Penn State does the same thing, because, of course, Big Ten school, Northeastern school, they've been pretty big about like giving the vaccines. Like, I know the Bryce Jordan Center has a clinic right now too,
Hmm.
which is not solely affiliated through the school. Like, it's not just for students; it's for like anybody. I think within like a 50-mile radius or something like that. So that's a little different. It's more for like public convenience too. But I do think we're probably going to start seeing some sort of trend where you're going to have to get vaccinated, just like how you have to get flu shots and things like that. I mean, I am curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, it's easier in terms of colleges though because they already do require vaccinations for other things like the flu or like the tetanus
Right.
shot. So I think it's easier. They could easily say you need to get the COVID vaccine before you come here, just because it is such a hot spot college. I mean, we've seen it, we've experienced it. I got
Oh
COVID,
yeah.
so it's such a hot spot. So um, yeah, I mean, I could see colleges going that direction, but I don't think in terms of big companies like this, like if there are players that don't want to get it and they have a strong validation of reasons not to get it, I don't think they don't want to alienate anybody. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was funny. You were like one of the first people I know who got it. You were kind of like a test dummy. I'm like, I want to see how Matt makes it out of this one. We still did the podcast though. We did not.
Yeah.
Still did
Did it
it.
from home.
You did it from home. But anyways, though, the Warriors probably should have stayed at home, because the Mavericks won a 28-0 run in that game. The game, I think it was like 36-12 at the end of the first. Apparently, it was like one of the longest runs, I believe second longest one in NBA history or something like that, which was crazy to think. But I definitely did not watch this game, Matt, but I think I'm glad I didn't. Not that this is really all that newsworthy, but I just had to bring it up.
Yeah, that get Steph out of there, man. He's so down bad right now. They scored more points in the third quarter of that game than they did in the first two quarters combined.
Oh.
That's
And
insane.
it
Like
doesn't matter if they didn't try. Like,
oh my God, they were down like 20 points at the end of the first quarter. I was like, how's that even possible? He played 12 minutes. How are you down 20 already?
yeah, I love Juan Toscana Anderson's talking about how he plays his tail off and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't think there was a whole lot of effort on
Yeah.
anybody in that game.
Listen, man, you can play it as hard as you want to. You still got to put the ball in the basket.
Scoreboard. Anyways, though, a team that is probably not winning as many games is because this man's out. LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers. Apparently, he's close to returning, though. Could be by either the end of the month, which would be in a couple days, or maybe even next month. We'll see. They got Anthony Davis back. He's slowly making his way back into the lineup. But the Lakers, I would say, have stayed afloat is probably the best term. They haven't completely collapsed, but of course, this team is going to be worse because LeBron and Anthony Davis did not play. So when you're two of the best players in basketball aren't playing, you're going to be worse. That's just how it is. I don't think people should have expected anything more of that. But do you think that the bigger question here, can the Lakers get their act together for the playoffs and then make a run like we all thought they would entering the year?
Well, I think the final few regular season games will be like a preseason for AD and LeBron, kind of getting their feet back under them before they go full in the playoffs. I think there's no question LeBron's gonna be ready for playoffs. That man is on another level. We've seen it before. Like anything you expect out of that guy, he's gonna do it to the 10th degree. He's gonna be ready to go. I think Anthony Davis is actually more of the question mark here because he's had injury issues pretty much throughout his entire career. And rebounding from those injury issues has been kind of inconsistent for him. Like his on-court performance has not suffered all that much, but in terms of staying healthy, can he stay healthy throughout the playoffs without needing a game off? He's not going to be able to do that, especially if they're at the 4 and 5 seed. They're going to have a tough road from the get-go.
Yeah, they're gonna have a tough matchup. Maybe the Nuggets, maybe the Dallas Mavericks, who are heating up. Could be one of those teams. Could even be the Clippers. So definitely won't be as easy of a road, at least to start in the first round. Of course, they got Portland last year, who was a good 8 seed, but they still beat them in 5. And a lot of these teams have gotten better since then. Yeah, I would like to think, like I agree with you, Matt. Like I feel like LeBron is just gonna be LeBron, and he's never proven not otherwise. Anthony Davis, we'll see how he returns. He had the more serious injury of the two. LeBron was just a sprained ankle, and I think they're just taking their time more than anything. Who knows? Maybe he could play now if he wanted to. I really don't know. But yeah, the Lakers, as long as they can get their act together, I think their role players do understand their roles. Like it's not like Dennis Schroeder's going to be like, "Bro, LeBron, get out." Like I got this now. Yeah, I'm trying to put food on my table, man. Like, so I think that they'll all kind of go back, and I think that this team is bought into a championship. I could be biased. I can admit that, but I do think that the Lakers, if healthy, like they've all been saying, because this team's still confident that they can go out there and do what they got to do.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, this roster has improved since they won the championship last year. They've gotten better. So if they're at full strength, they're going on full cylinders, man. It's tough to see anybody beating them, especially since you have one of the best generational players of all time, LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I mean, obviously they're a great team. I think they'll, the question for them is, will they be able to get on all cylinders come playoff time? It's a quick transition with them coming back at the end of the regular season, getting their feet back under them and going full-fledged right into the playoffs. So it'll be tough.
Yeah, Frank Vogel is definitely going to have a challenge on his hands. Not only is he getting LeBron, Anthony Davis back, they just got Andre Drummond. Ben McLemore's been giving him minutes recently. He had like 6-7 threes against the Mavericks the other night and started in that game. So it's a lot of moving parts. He's definitely got to shorten that rotation. The Lakers are really deep, so it's some good problems to have. But of course, we've always tried our best to shed light on maybe things not as NBA related, and we're gonna give some props here to the women's game. Shout out to Kim Mulkey of Baylor. She just freaking secured the bag. She's gonna be signing with, or did already sign with, the LSU Tigers. She was extremely successful at Baylor. This program, fun fact, never even made the tournament before Mulkey got there. Ever since she's been there for 21 years, won 3 national championships, but now is going to be heading to Baton Rouge. She grew up 50 miles, give or take, away from the area. So it makes sense that this is where she wants to go at the end of the day. She also played at Louisiana Tech as a player, I believe also coached there. And she's going to be making an astonishing $2.5 million that first year, which is a whole lot of money that neither you or me have, Matt.
Definitely not. If we ever see that kind of money, we're doing something right. But it's a huge hire for LSU. Obviously not that dominant of a women's basketball program. When you think women's basketball dominant, you do not think the LSU Tigers. But if Mulkey can turn this program into a powerhouse the way that she did with Baylor, you have to put her in the conversation for best women's coach of all time, at least in the top 5. I mean, obviously there's a lot of great coaches in the women's basketball arena. I know. So it'll be tough to see where she is in that conversation. But if she turns this program around too, I don't know how many other college women, especially women's college basketball coaches, have gone to 2 places and been extremely successful like that. So we'll see where she goes. And in terms of Baylor, where do they go from her without her? Where do they go from here?
I'm sure it's going to be a coveted job because there is a rich history there. But she was quite literally a big reason why there is a rich history there.
Exactly.
Maybe the fact that the men's team won a championship too. Well, maybe, people are like, all right, that's because the women's team is always typically better than the men's team. But obviously Baylor did their thing. They're winning national championship in the men's side of things. Greatest coach of all time. Gino Auriemma and Pat Summitt, RIP at Pat. They're still immortal in college basketball. I don't think she's passing either of those two, but in the conversation, top 5, top 10, maybe. But yeah, I don't know if I can give her that just yet. But she will be inducted into the Hall of Fame in May, along with a lot of the other great players that we talked about and coaches and things like that. So shout out to Mulkey there. She definitely has the Hall of Fame resume. It's good to see her get there. But yeah, I think she's going to turn it around. Apparently the SEC is a lot more competitive. South Carolina won the national championship for the ladies in 2017. Texas A&M's always got a really good team too. So I think she's going to be playing better basketball. And since she turned one program around, I definitely think she can at least turn this one around too.
And I think it'll be more to her too if it's her hometown team, like you said, only 50 miles away from Baton Rouge where she grew up. So I think it'll mean more to her if she's able to turn that program around too, just because it's her hometown team.
Yeah, I think, again, I'm not somebody who knows a whole lot about women's basketball. I'll blatantly admit that. But based on what I was reading, it did sound like this was a move that was expected to happen. This wasn't like as shocking as maybe the outside world suggested, because like you said, Matt, that she is from there and was planning on eventually doing her business in Baylor and then riding off into the sunset with LSU. But for the last time here, the motto has always been consistent here. Matt, I'm going to throw you the lob and you're going to dunk that thing down.
It's no team left behind, Hunter.
No team left behind here. We're going to give our players of the week here. Matt, I always let you go first, and I will still let you go first here.
All right, well, Hunter, I had to dig deep into my bag this week, as you always say, at least for one player for the last podcast. And that's I'm going to start with Darius Garland. I know you're not the biggest fan of Darius Garland, but I will say, it was Colin Sexton you didn't like.
Yeah, I'm not a big Colin Sexton guy. No.
Okay, so Darius Garland, he had a streak of 6 consecutive games of 20-plus points that was just broken last night. Only had 13. But he has been getting a ton of playing time with a truly terrible team. But he's been putting up some numbers with them, so good for him. In his last 4 games, he is shooting 50% from 3 and shooting 52% from the floor. So almost at that threshold.
Almost got it.
Almost shooting better from 3 than from the field, which is I love to see. But good week for Darius Garland. Maybe he can be a good tandem there with Sexton, or maybe they choose Garland over Sexton. Who knows?
Just doesn't make sense. They're both like undersized guards who don't play defense and aren't the best facilitators. I don't know. Cleveland just being Cleveland, I guess. I'm just curious. This is random, but have you ever seen that Cleveland tourism video?
No, definitely not.
I'll look it up. It's so funny. It's like it's like
what is the tourism in Cleveland?
That's the point. Like it's like the funniest thing. You gotta look it up after the show. It is so funny. It's like this guy basically made this like spoof about Cleveland. He's like our lake catches on fire. Like all these fish have AIDS. he's like our economy is based on LeBron James.
Yeah,
it's funny. You got
exactly.
I thought if you caught that reference, you would have laughed. Anyways, though, the player on my list. So I do have a theme here. It's gonna be the people we love on Ball Don't Lie. Are the people we gatekeep since day one. And this guy this week shot 56.9% from the field and 56.3% from 3. He almost got in that. He almost got it. And that's going to be Michael Porter Jr. We hype him up so much here on Ball Don't Lie. Had a career high of 39 points in just, I think, 2 games ago, I believe. So he has been hooping recently, averaging in 3 games in the past 7 days, 32 points, 6 rebounds, 2 blocks, shooting those great numbers. Denver Nuggets, 9-4 without Jamal Murray this year. They have been absolutely hooping, and Michael Porter has really stepped into that role and has really helped out Nikola Jokic. And if they keep winning games, I must say, Matt, I think he's going to lock up the MVP.
Yeah, I mean, it's been impressive for Michael Porter Jr. the way he's been able to step in for Jamal Murray there, because that's a huge hole to fill. And like you said about Joker, I mean, if they keep winning, he's probably going to win MVP. Hurts me, but whatever. MPJ, man, I mean, we've been on his bandwagon since the beginning. It feels like. Yeah. I can't remember if it was last spring or in the fall. I declared us a Michael Porter Jr. podcast, but it's been a great ride with MPJ. We love him here on the podcast.
We know he's listening. They always listen. He was putting on one time so he can make one of our players of the week list. I got you, Michael Porter Jr. No worries about it. What's next for you, though, Matt?
So I'm going to go with a player who was my runner-up last week, but he had to be included this week, and that's Julius Randle. He has been the face of the Knicks' 9-game winning streak that just came to an end on Monday night. But during that streak, Randle averaged a tick over 30 points per game and was extremely efficient from the floor, as our guy Mike Marandino has documented for us. Shout out, Mike.
Yes, he has.
Just this week, Randle scored 40 and 31 in back-to-back games, and while their winning streak is over, basketball is officially back at MSG.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that later, Matt. And I also have Julius Randle on my list, too, because I feel like that's someone we both always hype up here on Ball Don't Lie. I saw him in his Laker days. I always thought he was really good. But man, oh man, he is, I think, at this point, a lock for most improved player. And I'm going to take it a step further here, Matt. Do you think he might even be All-NBA this year?
I think he is. And I think, oh man, this is crazy. I was just having this conversation with my roommate, who I've brought up before, who's famously a Knicks fan. But he's been saying that he should get All-NBA over Kevin Durant this year because Kevin Durant hasn't played as much, and Julius Randle has pretty much played every game for the Knicks and has got them playing really well. I think it's an interesting conversation to have.
I think it is. I mean, I'm not saying first team. He probably didn't get first.
Oh, no. No.
But it's a weird year because LeBron and Durant have both missed a bunch of games, and that's two guys who would be in like that forward spot. Paul George has been great this year too, but he's also missed games. Off the top, I mean, Giannis will definitely get a spot. Kawhi will definitely get a spot at the forward position.
Tobias Harris will get a spot.
Okay, let's calm down a little bit. But yeah, I think Julius, off the top, I'm gonna say yes. I did not like fill out a list yet though, but I definitely think he's got to be in that conversation. I mean, you went as far as say that he might be a dark horse for MVP, like maybe not to win it, but just a guy like getting votes.
Yeah, I had him when we did our MVP rankings last week. I had him at 5th, just in terms of getting votes and the fact that he's played the entire year. He hasn't gotten hurt, and without him, that Knicks team would be nowhere. I mean, that team outside of him is not honestly that great. And Julius Randle has been the face of that team this entire year, and he's been, huffing and puffing all year because Tibbs got him playing 39 minutes a game.
He's
But
yeah.
yeah, but this is the first time in a while we've had the same player on the Player of the Week list, Hunter.
Yeah, my picks were not as obscure as they normally are, so
Yeah.
maybe that was why I went with the fan favorites here, or the podcast favorites. But that was number 2 on my list, so I'll let you go for number 3.
So I'm going to go with John Morant. The defending Rookie of the Year has been balling out recently and keeping this Grizzlies squad firmly in the playoff race. They've been inconsistent of late. Only won 2 out of their last 5 games. But in his last 5 games, Morant is averaging 29.2 points per game while shooting 59% from the floor, which, with as bad as a three-point shooter as he is, that number is fairly impressive. He's also had a couple of highlight plays this week that have reminded us how quick and gifted he is around the basket, kind of reminding us how good he is.
Yeah, I feel like with the hype of a lot of these other young players, we're kind of forgetting about Ja Morant, how good he is. I almost put him on the list. He's a big David Green. I got to give him credit. Now, maybe because Zion got hurt, but he was saying before that year even started, Ja Morant's Rookie of the Year. He got that prediction right. I got to give it to him one time there. He has been on the bandwagon since day one. I know we both love Ja Morant, but the player who's going to be on my list here is someone who I feel like you and me specifically definitely was gatekeeping a little bit. We knew this dude was going to be a monster. That's Tyrese Halliburton himself.
Gosh.
Had to make the Player of the Week list. He's been hooping recently, averaging 19 points, 9 assists, and 4 rebounds per game. He has started 17 games. They finally put him in the starting lineup. It's about damn time, Luke Walton. You opened up your eyes and made that call. I want to know, Matt, do you think him and De'Aaron Fox could potentially be one of the best backcourts in the NBA?
Oh, I hope so, because Halliburton can shoot the lights out, man. I don't know how good he is on defense. I'm assuming he's not that great because Sacramento sucks. But I think he's a great pairing with De'Aaron Fox because De'Aaron Fox isn't looking to shoot threes. He's looking to get to the cup and dish it. And I think Halliburton's a great pairing for that because they just need three-point shooters, and he fits that role perfectly. Oh, Tyrese Halliburton, I love that man, the way he shoots the basketball.
It's weird, but he's got that weird shooting form.
Yeah.
But it goes in. It's like a little.
That's all that matters. That's all that matters.
Yeah. But yeah, he's an absolute baller. I love the fact that he can play on and off the ball, and De'Aaron Fox more of a slasher attacker. Halliburton is too, though. He's a really skilled player, but Halliburton is very good passer, which De'Aaron Fox doesn't really have that playmaking ability. So they really do mesh pretty well together. And Buddy Hield. It's a nice trio, but it hasn't led to many wins.
Yeah, because Luke Walton's the coach, man.
Yeah. Addition by subtraction. Maybe get a good coach in there and they'll win some more games. But of course, it's going to be our last players of the week here. Definitely had some fun with it, some good laughs. Glad we were able to bring up our guys. But talking about Julius Randle, is going to transition into our next point. Is basketball back in the Big Apple? It kind of seems like it. The Nets, they just recently clinched a playoff spot. I think it was because the Celtics and Hornets lost. So they were able to get it. So I don't even think they played and they got it. But congrats to the Nets. They're currently sitting atop of the 76ers, Matt, in the Eastern Conference standings right now. Knicks, though, after that 9-game winning streak, which was snapped by the Phoenix Suns, they are currently at 4th place right now. Starting off with the Knicks here, Matt, I know we've talked about Coach of the Year and stuff like that. We've made predictions. Is Tom Thibodeau Coach of the Year, in your opinion?
In my opinion, he is, just because, look, you look at the other guys in the running. Quinn Snyder obviously would be the other candidate here. But Quinn Snyder had a good roster, man. I mean, the Utah Jazz probably should have won their first-round playoff series last year if they didn't totally collapse, which is part of Quinn Snyder's fault. But he had a good roster coming in, man, and they had a lot of depth. They had a very good team around Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. But in terms of the Knicks, nobody expected anything from them this year. Maybe improvement towards the playing game was what we thought, but certainly neither of us had them in the playoffs. Had them improving this much, and nobody saw this improvement from Julius Randle either coming. So I think just the fact that Tom Thibodeau not only has them in the playoffs, but like firmly competitively in the playoffs as the 4 seed right now and a 9-game winning streak. I mean, they're firing on all cylinders right now. You got to give Tom Thibodeau his credit.
Yeah, I think if Quinn Snyder wins it, he's very deserving of the award. He's someone who has done a phenomenal job. I think he's a great head coach, one of the best in the league. But I'm with you, Matt. If it was my vote, I'm voting Tibbs because this team had no expectations. When Derrick Rose got traded from the Pistons to the Knicks, he asked to get traded to the Knicks, obviously, for that connection. And Dwayne Casey said, if you want to win games, why do you want to go to the Knicks? And look where they've been since. He's been a great addition. Emmanuel Quickly, who's also a podcast darling here, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, the whole squad there. They got to a point where Tom Thibodeau, him of all people, was like, we need to cancel practice for a day because you guys work too damn hard. And Emmanuel Quickly was like, I still want to get shots up. Like this team is so bought into a culture. He seemed like a questionable hire at times when he first got the job, but it seems like this team is bought in. A lot of these players are having their best years of their career. Nerlens Noel, too, has been absolutely phenomenal for that team after Mitchell Robinson was out for the year. I'm with you. I think he's coach of the year.
Absolutely. And just what you said, man, that culture has been damn good, to quote that Washington football team guy. But this culture has been incredible for them all season long, really. And even just seeing young guys, you saw Julius Randle really step into that leadership role, which he really has never had before, and he's really embraced it this year. He's getting his shots up. We've seen that story recently all over Instagram from me, where Randle was affected by Kobe Bryant. And learned from Kobe, obviously played with him for a couple years there in LA, where he just learned that habit where as soon as he landed, the first place he did was find a gym and go get shots up. It didn't matter what time he got off that flight, you were going to get shots up. And he's done that this year, and he's really, really improved. Even it just speaks to guys like Emmanuel Quickly, such a young guy, and even when they cancel practice, he wants to go get shots up. That's the kind of culture they have there now.
They're getting the right pieces. That's what they're doing. They're getting the right guys and the right culture there. And that's extremely important, not only for the short term, but the long term. And Julius Randle has gotten better in quite literally every single statistical category. And just the way he plays too. Like, he puts up great numbers, Matt. But I was with you last week when you were saying, I feel like his impact is bigger than the numbers even. Like, he's one of those guys too this year.
Absolutely. I mean, his impact is immeasurable, and especially after last season where he struggled so much. I mean, he shot like 27% from three. Like, he wasn't a good player last year. He was getting ragged on New York Twitter because he's making $21 million a year, and everybody's like, "Why would you sign him to this?" And now this year, I mean, he's earned that and then some. He's going to get an and now it's about he's going to get an extension there for sure.
Yeah, he absolutely deserves it. Can't make an argument against it. I remember we were talking about, do you trade Julius Randle to get a star? I don't think so. I think he is a star, to be quite frank.
Mm-hmm.
But the last time the Knicks and the Nets were in the playoffs at the same time was 2013. As crazy, that was a long time ago, Matt, because I believe we were in middle school. I want to say.
Yep.
Carmelo Anthony, it was those Knicks teams. The Brooklyn Nets, it was that weird science experiment gone wrong with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett. They thought it was 2003. It was 2013, unfortunately, when they decided to make that trade, or I believe it was actually the year before. But anyways, that's the last time both of them been in the playoffs, and it's looking like they'll both be in there again. At least we know one team definitely will be. And the last time these teams played was in 2004 when it was the New Jersey Nets who swept the Knicks in the first round. Kenyon Martin was the MVP of that series, averaging 23 and 14. Richard Jefferson and Jason Kidd doing their thing as well in that series. And the Nets went on to advance in the playoffs, but they did not really, I think, went much further than that. I think they lost in the second round. So it's been a while since both New York teams, and that was even a New Jersey team, have been good. But I just want to know, Matt, like, LeBron James made a good point saying that the Knicks, when they're good, the game of basketball is just different. It feels different. Do you agree with that? Do you think when the Knicks and New York basketball is popping like this, it changes things?
He's definitely right, and it's good for the league. It's like the Yankees, same city. Whether you're watching to root for them or root against them, you're watching, and either way, that's money for the league. So obviously, it's great for the league, and also it's cool to see a big market like New York being relevant in basketball again because it's such a rich basketball area. It always has been and always will be. It's great to see the Knicks and the Nets playing well.
It's pretty ironic that the Yankees are the ones that are just been absolutely terrible this year, and the Knicks have been the team that's been really good. Usually it's the other way around. I think expectations were a little different this year too, Matt, for both those teams, but it's been quite the opposite. It was like Freaky Friday, sports edition, if you will. But I'm going to say I totally agree with you. I can maybe speak a bit differently from a perspective that I am from New York. And when you hear the annoying Knicks fans speak, and they're actually playing good basketball. I do know some Met fans too, but it is a blue and orange area, 100%. The Nets are kind of more like the hipster team that you buy the hats and you buy the Biggie merch. That's about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely been really cool to see the Knicks be good again. I love watching this team. Like, they're just dogs. I love teams. I'm a sucker for basketball players who just go hard and go after it. 24/7, play defense. They're one of the best defensive teams in the league too, Matt. They're not flashy. They got some star players, but they just get out the mud. And I always love watching teams like that too.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely, one of those teams that you just love watching because their spirit and their ability to play basketball is just it's contagious. I mean they just you can tell they love playing together, they love playing the game, and they play great defense, which is lost in today's NBA. And Tibbs got them doing that. Obviously, Tibbs got them running gases out there pretty much, playing 38 minutes a game. But I mean, he's got them playing so well. They've got a deep bench too. I mean, they've got a decent roster. I'm not sure where they'll be come playoff time, but they're. I mean, if you're in New York right now, I mean, you got to be feeling ecstatic about this.
Yeah, I mean, they're just a fun, exciting team to watch. They're like an all NBA League Pass team, kind of, if you will, a team that you just want to watch. So I mean, I do have MSG at home, so I guess I can watch it in theory. But yeah, they're definitely exciting to really put on the screen. But I want to know short term here, and we'll get into long term stuff too. What are the expectations, not only for the Knicks and the Nets, as we come to the end of the regular season and then postseason?
Well, I think the Nets are finals contenders, no doubt. Probably the favorites at this point, assuming everybody on that team is playing. But the Knicks, in terms of their perspective, they should just be happy to win a series. Even making the playoffs is a far greater accomplishment for them than even we thought in the beginning of the year, as we mentioned already. So just to even getting the playoffs and not only getting the playoffs and not being like an 8 seed, but being like a competitive team, a team that quite honestly, none of these top teams would want to play in a 7-game series. I know the Bucks would be nervous about playing them. Sixers, I mean, they've played the Sixers really tough all year. Even though the Sixers swept the season series, they've played them really tough all year. And then a 4-5 matchup, I think the Knicks would win that series no matter who they play in a 4-5 because they're just a tough team right now.
Yeah, they're currently slated against the Atlanta Hawks. I think we know how that one would go, Matt. After the Hawks slander has been going on the last couple of weeks here on Ball Don't Lie. The interesting thing is that these two teams, the Nets and the Knicks, can play each other in the playoffs potentially. And it probably would have to be in the 1-4, I'd imagine. I don't think the Knicks fall to 6. And then it's like a 2. Yeah, I don't see that happening. So it probably would have to be in the 1-4 or 1-5 matchup if they fall the 5 seed. But that'd be a fun series because the Nets are a team that's all offense, no defense, and Knicks are a team that is no offense, all defense. So it'd be interesting to see how that one plays out.
And they've played Brooklyn tough all year too. They've gotten really close. They've gotten a couple times. I remember a couple of weeks ago where a Knicks Nets game was going on, and the Knicks kind of got screwed at the end of that game. There was the Julius Randle. They called an up and down traveling violation on him. So yeah, I mean they've played him really tough.
Matt, we were there. We were at Champs watching that game. And remember, they were up by like 20, and then they blew the lead. And Julius Randle like flipped down, got ejected. I think we talked about it the next day on the podcast. Or 2 days, because it's Monday, Wednesday. But yeah, that was definitely, like you said, this is a tough team. Like, they just don't care. They just go after everybody by any means necessary. And that's not the teams people want to face. I think they can easily win a series. I don't know if they're going to win 2. That would definitely be a stretch unless the Nets just fall apart and something crazy happens. But I will say with the Nets, they are my favorites. I picked them entering the year. I'm going to stick with it. But I do have my reservations. This team reminds me a lot of the Los Angeles Clippers last year, where I'm not exactly sure what the cohesion is there. This team's not even as deep, and they're not good on defense. I mean, if KD, Harden, and Kyrie are healthy, it is hard to see a team beat them. But I still think there's a lot of question marks about this team. And in a 7-game series, I just don't know if they have that leadership and things like that to get it done. I'm being honest.
Yeah. And like you said, the cohesion is such a big thing. Like the big three that has been talked about so much and given so much attention all year has played like 3 or 4 games together. They haven't played together. And I don't care like how good you are. Come playoff time, you can't just throw them out there and expect them to have cohesion all of a sudden, expect them to be on the same page all of a sudden. Even if they're practicing together, it's nothing like being out in the game. There's nothing like a game situation, especially if they're going. I mean, if they're all three of them are playing together for the first time in the second round or in the Eastern Conference Finals. I mean, you're going to be playing a great team at that point. It's tough. There's no way to expect that they're going to have cohesion.
Yeah, I mean, my question is this: who gets the ball at the end of the game?
Mm-hmm.
All three of those guys used to get the ball at the end of the game, and now someone's going to have to defer. We'll see.
Who's your answer, Hunter? Who gets the ball at the end of the game?
I think KD should get it, but
I think so too.
Like he's the best player on the team. Kyrie though is a cold dude too in those situations. Harden, unfortunately, is probably the one that's kind of faltered the most in those spots. Not that he hasn't hit big shots and he hasn't made big plays. He had that big block against our guy, the torture chamber himself, Lou Dort, a couple last season in the bubble. But yeah, I mean, I'm giving it to those dudes. But KD's, even Kobe said he's like, I could never figure out Kevin Durant. He said once he fixed his weaknesses, he was unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, literally Max Kellerman, fate of the universe, game on the line. I want KD taking that shot, no doubt. Mid-range 3-pointer, even in the cup, like he's tall enough to get to the cup, like and not be fazed by anybody in the paint. I want Kevin Durant taking that shot. I don't care where you are on the court. Kevin Durant is a silky smooth basketball player, man. He's making that shot.
Yeah, that's who I'm giving the ball to too. Couldn't agree more. But a player who typically is great at these clutch time moments, Dame Dollar himself when it's Dame time. But Portland has been really struggling recently, Matt, and especially Damian Lillard. So this year, he's had a phenomenal year overall, averaging 28.5 points per game, shooting 43.7% from the field, 37.3% from the three-point line. But this month has been one of the worst months of his career. Probably the worst month. I didn't do all this research. I did read an article on it. Since April of 2019, he's averaging 22 points per game and only 37.1% from the field and 34.7% from the three-point line. And Portland has struggled as a result. They lost 9 out of 11 games. And it's also worth noting too that 6 straight losses that they had were decided by 2 or less points. So they have not closed out games like they normally do with Damian Lillard there. I kind of want to know, Matt, what do you think's been the issue with this team?
I think the issue with this team has just been they can't close out games, like you said. I mean, it's these 2-point games are going to kill you. I mean, you can't do this in the playoffs. And if you're doing this in the regular season, against all these teams that probably you shouldn't be even in these close games with. I mean, how can you trust this team come playoff time? And if you're Damian Lillard, I mean, you kind of got to put the blame on yourself here because you're the guy on this team. And you have not been showing up as of recent. And I think, Damian Lillard will be the first to say that. We both know that. But he is the guy on this team. And he needs to look at himself in the mirror and say, if we're losing this many 2-point games, that's got to be on me.
Yeah. And I will say he has taken responsibility and has blatantly admitted, like, I'm not playing well. I kind of wonder, Matt, do you think injuries could potentially have something to do with it? He's been battling an abdomen strain, a knee bruise. He's had hamstring issues, ankle injuries. He's actually taken a couple headshots too from freak, incidents that, of course, just happen within the game of basketball. Again, credit Damian Lillard not making excuse, still going out there. But I don't know about you. When I watch him, he obviously does not look like the same player.
Well, I mean, obviously he's probably not fully healthy, but in this season where it seems like everybody's getting hurt and no one is at full strength, especially come crunch time here at the end of the season, you can't make that excuse. I mean, even if he isn't at full 100%, if you're out there playing, you've got to play the way you've expected to play. I don't care how injured you are. If you're going to put yourself out there and not take yourself out of the game, if you're going to put yourself in these situations and be the star player, you've got to continue to be the star player no matter how hurt you are. You can be hurt after the game too. You just got to battle through it. And I think Damian Lillard is a mentally tough guy, and obviously he's being affected by these injuries right now. But this team needs him right now, and he needs to step it up.
Yeah, I didn't think I'd shout him out on this podcast, but shout out Anthony Simons. He is the first player in NBA history to hit his first 9 threes straight in a single game. Shot 9 of 10 from 3 overall. Just missed that last one, Matt. So close. But I don't know. Do you think he could be something, or is this like a flash in the past game? Probably a flash in the past game.
yeah, it's probably a flash in the pan. Honestly, I mean, it's a good game for him, no doubt. But did he won the dunk contest, right?
He did. He won probably the worst dunk contest I've seen in 10 years.
Yeah, so good for him, man. I mean, he's getting his money, I guess. But I mean, listen, if you're not winning games and you're leaning on Anthony Simons to be your 3-point shooter, this is not a good time in Portland right now.
Well, I think the reason they have to lean on Anthony Simons because Norman Powell sucked for them. He shot 28.9% from three after leading the NBA at 43.9% this season. He has been absolute booty cheeks, as you like to say, Matt. What do you say? Booty butt buns?
The booty butt buns, the bootiest of cheeks.
Absolutely. I had to get that in at least one more time for this podcast is over. He's been bad. I wonder why. I wonder who was saying, maybe don't trade Gary Trent Jr. What are you doing? Something. But
it just made that trade infinitely worse because like what he is doing right now, 28.9% from three, that's exactly what you're missing from Gary Trent Jr., who is younger and cheaper.
Has played well for the Raptors too, by the way. And they're trying to lose games. They also signed Rondae Hollis Jefferson because that's going to solve all their problems. So yeah, they're trying stuff right now. Though they slid to the 7th seed, the Mavericks have jumped up by a couple games. And then even the Memphis Grizzlies, we talk about John Moran, those boys, they're heating up too. They played really well the second half of the season. They can get jumped too. I don't know. Portland's getting to the point where they might be in the play-in and they might not even make it out.
Yeah, I mean, if they get in the play-in tournament, man, I mean, all bets are off. I mean, it's crazy how the season's changed because last year it got to a point where nobody wanted to play them in the play-in tournament. Nobody wanted to play them. And now if a team plays them in the play-in tournament, I mean, if Steph Curry gets his chance at Portland Trailblazers in the play-in tournament, he might be licking his chops. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, Steph Curry definitely likes playing Damian Lillard in those big games. That's for sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I will say too, I have an interesting point here, an interesting theory. Terry Stotts, great coach. I think he's very, very good at his job. But last couple of years, hasn't really lived up to it. That the Western Conference Finals appearance starting to be in the rearview mirror a little bit. They got a guy in David Vanderpool, who Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum have said they love this guy. They thought he should have gotten the head coaching job in Minnesota. They thought he got robbed. He has won that locker room over somewhat. Do you think they make a coaching change this season doesn't end well?
I mean, they'll have to make some kind of change if this season doesn't end the way that if they keep sliding like this, whether it be in the front office, on the bench with the coaches, or on the floor, they have to make adjustments if they want to seriously compete in the West. Like you said, the Western Conference has gotten a lot tougher since they made the Western Conference Finals a couple of years ago. But they want to compete, man. Damian Lillard wants a championship. He's remained committed to Portland for some reason and doesn't want a former super team. He wants to get it done in Portland. If that's the case, you got to make some changes, man. You got to.
Yeah, I mean, Damian Lillard, the thing I think everyone loves about him, why he's like, your favorite player's favorite player, why he's a fan favorite, is because of how loyal he is. He does not sound like he wants to leave Portland anytime soon. It sounds like he wants to retire there, things like that. But like you said, Matt, does he ever win a championship there? And if he realizes he doesn't, does he leave? I mean, this is something that everyone's talked about for years, but I mean, give the people the truth.
If he stays in Portland for the entirety of his career, I doubt he wins a ring. Unless the NBA landscape changes drastically in the next few years and all of a sudden Portland becomes a huge free agent destination, Lillard is not going to be he's just going to constantly be behind the 8 ball playing in Portland. He doesn't have enough talent around him, and all the acquisitions they make are through the draft and through trading. They're not going to sign free agents. It's just not going to happen. They don't have the money for it, first of all. And second of all, no free agent wants to go, I want to go play in Portland. Like, yeah, as much of an attraction as playing with Damian Lillard is, nobody wants to go play in Portland. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think he wins one in Portland. I think if he wins a championship, it's somewhere else. But I'm not sure he's going to leave, to be honest. He might be one of those players that we talk about, one of the greatest to ever not win a ring. Not that he still can't, but Chris Paul is right now in that category of he's a winner. We know he's a winner. He makes winning plays, phenomenal basketball player, but no ring on the finger. Damian Lillard might be the same way. Who knows?
Absolutely. I think that's the way it's trending right now.
Well, I will say, I don't think Damian Lillard has the worst supporting cast around him. He does have some pretty good players. They've had a whole lot of success there. But we're going to give our top 5 list of players who we think do have the worst supporting cast in the league. We haven't had top 5 lists, I feel like, in a while, Matt, but they're always really fun. I actually had a lot of fun making this one, too. My list is a little interesting because I kind of went about it in a different way. But I'll let you – do you want to, give your 5 to 1, or do you want to, go back and forth? We never talk about this ahead of time.
Yeah, so why don't we do we want to start at 5 and work our way up?
Okay, yeah, 5 being 1 being they're in the worst spot, 5 being okay, yeah, you can go first.
All right, yeah, so we can go back and forth with this
Yeah,
here.
let's do that. All
All
right.
right, so I'll start with 5, and this one might be a little bit of a shock to you, but I'm gonna go with the New York Knicks and Julius Randle. This one is a really, really bold selection considering the streak that this team just went on and the praise we just gave them. But outside of Julius Randle, who on this team would you trust to lead this team? If Randle isn't having a great game, if Julius Randle isn't having a great game, this team is going to lose. Their centers are extremely limited offensively, while they are great defensively, and Mitch Robinson runs the well. Even Norvell Pell has been playing pretty well for them off the bench. The guard play is inconsistent at best, and Alfred Payton is truly the bane of New York Knicks Twitter's existence. Derrick Rose and Emmanuel Quickley are nice players in this team and can score in bunches, but their defense is horrendous, and they both come off the bench. They've got great team chemistry, but in all honesty, this roster outside of Randall is not good.
And also, like, where's Obi Toppin been all season? Like, we thought
Nowhere.
this was like a rookie of the year candidate, and he's been awful this year. He's been really, really bad. Hopefully, he can turn it around, though. Seems like a good dude. Julius Randle did not make my list, so I'm glad we don't have 5 for 5 agreements here. My number 5 one's a little interesting because we both, I think, have this guy on our list. Like, we must, because we talk about it every single podcast. Steph Curry's 5.
Wow.
Here's my argument. The way I thought about it was not only just the player personnel, I thought organization. And they have great ownership, great front office, and great coaching. That's how I went about mine too. Like, I considered everything. So that's why I have them only 5, because the roster is bad. But out of the other guys on this list, the Warriors front office and their team is the one I actually trust the most to surround Curry with talent, because they have done it in the past. So while probably out of these guys, he has the worst roster around him, I don't think he's in the worst situation, though.
I will say the front office and head coaching the whole coaching staff is great, obviously. But I think their roster is so bad. Like you have to put the blame on. You have to put the blame on somebody, and it's not on Steph Curry. I mean, it's not Steph Curry's fault that his roster is booty butt buns. So I think I would put that on the front office in the same respect. And I think they're kind of winning in spite of the bad roster and in spite of the lack of what this front office did to try to get him help. I mean, they saw Klay Thompson go down. They said, "How can we fix that?" Kelly Oubre. That's not the answer. That's not the answer.
Poppy.
Yeah, like that's not the answer.
Yeah, you're right. But I will say, and they also passed on LaMelo Ball, which is not looking great right now.
Exactly.
They made some questionable decisions. But I will say that, Steph Curry's got a couple of these on the fingers. Mm-hmm. So I think that because the other ones ahead of Steph Curry, the organizations are even worse. So that's why I have Steph Curry 5 and not higher on the list. But who's 4?
even just looking at my list, there's some bad organizations here.
There's some bad ones on here.
Yeah, so my number 4 is Bradley Beal, Russell Westbrook, and the Wizards. On paper, in the beginning of the year, you just kind of assume this was a playoff team because of who they had, the 1 and 2 guard, and the talent. There's the talent they have there. But then you remember that Scott Brooks is the coach, and literally not one single soul on this basketball team can play a lick of defense, and that's including Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal. They have no interior presence, especially since they lost Thomas Bryant for the season earlier in the year. And what they make up for in guard and wing offense is all lost when you watch them attempt to play defense.
Yeah, that's fair. The reason why I didn't have that on my list is because they are together. So I was like, say what you want about Westbrook. He still is like a very good basketball player and is, going to help you win games, like even though he has his faults. So that's why I was like, I don't know if I put Beal on there just because like he has Westbrook. These other guys are a little bit more, bones and bare in the cabinets, if you will. So I think that's why he didn't make the list, but I do understand why you had them.
But with that being said, they're also 10 games under 500 still. So clearly something's off.
Something is off. It could be the coach. Scott Brooks is not that good of a coach, bro. I don't know how. You remember we talked about like, oh, he's getting fired. He still has his job.
Yeah.
Multiple coaches have been fired since, but
and they're just like kind of winning in spite of him. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, they're winning to get him fired. Apparently,
yeah.
That's how it's gonna work. Number 4 on my list is gonna be Trae Young. Now, I know they are winning games. I know they're 5th in the Eastern Conference. I know the situation doesn't seem all that bad, but when you really look at it, who else is around this guy? And he's only in his 3rd year. We talked about how much we love Trae Young and how he actually gets very overlooked, despite being a really good basketball player. But like long-term future there, I don't know if I see it with Trae Young in Atlanta because they just don't have anything. They have not been able to figure out their head coach. I know that they've had success once Lloyd Pierce was fired. But still not great there. John Collins is your second best player, and he's a free agent and might leave this offseason. Like they made, like I've been saying, really questionable free agent calls. Rondo didn't work out there. They traded him. Bogdan Bogdanovic has played better. But Danilo Gallinari, like these guys haven't been like, they just didn't make sense. They still have their issues. And I think those issues are going to add up, especially considering that this organization is not like a winning one. And so that's why I think that Trae Young is not in a very good spot right now.
Yeah, I was tempted to put Trae Young on my list, but the reason I didn't is just because the Hawks do have a winning record right now, and they've been hot since Lloyd Pierce was fired. It seems like they kind of figured it out again in spite of the oddly constructed roster. Like you said, I will blame the front office for the fact that they had money for the first time. And Trae Young, trying to make this team competitive around him. They had a boatload of cash, and they said, let's go overpay for Bojan Bogdanovic and Danilo Gallinari and Rajon Rondo, who they have already traded for Lou Williams. So I agree with it, but the reason it's not on my list is just because they do a winning record and they are firmly in the playoff race right now. So I left them off this list for that reason.
Yeah, I thought we definitely went about these lists a bit differently, but that's okay. Giving the fans all the bad teams in basketball. But anyways, though, who's number 3 for you then?
I've got Zach LaVine. So the Bulls got Vucevic, a move that we both loved and think needed to be done. But the Bulls have seen little to no improvement on the floor, and dare I say regression? I mean, they have relinquished their play-in tournament spot to the suddenly hot Wizards, and they've gotten little help around LaVine and Vucevic. How do they fix this team, Hunter? I don't know.
I don't know either. Zach LaVine also on my list. Number 2, though, on my list. So I'm definitely on the boat with you. I think this team is very poorly constructed. We both love the Vucevic move, but they've been losing games, which we talked about earlier in the podcast. And this team, while maybe the new general management, new front office regime, new head coach Billy Donovan, maybe they can turn it around, but I haven't seen it yet. And Zach LaVine's gotten to a point where he might be the best player, not on a good team. It might be that now.
Yeah, it might be. I mean, he's just stuck in such a bad situation in Chicago. And he's probably going to get extended there because they're going to throw a boatload of money at him, and he's not going to turn down a boatload of money from a team that can offer him more than anybody else can, just because of of bird rights, I think. So it's tough for LaVine. It's just I don't know how they improve this roster, and they have young talent. Like, I mean, Kobe White's good, but he's not the answer. I don't think at the point guard position there. I think in order for this team to get better, I think they need veteran help, not necessarily young help.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. The Bulls are definitely a mess right now, but I'll go to number 3 on my list, and that's going to be De'Aaron Fox's Sacramento Kings. Now, you might be like, oh, is De'Aaron Fox a star? Man's averaging over 25 points per game. I would say he's probably into at least star category, not superstar category yet. We talked about, I feel like I had him as like my replacement, like alternate for the All-Star game predictions, like what, or not even predictions, what I personally would have done. So I think he's really freaking good. And we talked about how much potential him and Halliburton have. But like Marvin Bagley has been a huge disappointment. Buddy Hield sounds like he doesn't want to be there at all. He has not had as great of a season as years past. Rashawn Holmes is fine, but like he's not Joel Embiid. Like he's just like this team is so poorly constructed. The Kings are like the Cleveland Browns of the NBA, basically a franchise that nobody wants to play for. They were good for like 3 years with Chris Webber and stuff there and Peja Stojakovic. That's basically it. And De'Aaron Fox is screwed because of that. He signed a long-term extension, so it's going to be harder to trade him, or maybe easier because he's probably going to be worth the money. If I'm him, my patience is running thin. I'm trying to get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, the Sacramento-Cleveland connection is kind of a connection we've made on this podcast before. It's where careers go to die, man. And De'Aaron Fox is stuck in an awful situation. Like you said, with Marvin Bagley, he has not figured it out. Their interior offense, defense, literally their entire front court is not good. And they've struggled there for a while now. It's such a bad situation to be in. This year, Sacramento has been an awful franchise since about 2005. And they've just never figured it out. Like, I don't even know where they go from here. Like, they've gotten lottery picks for the past 15 years, and De'Aaron Fox is pretty much the guy you had to show for it. Buddy Hield, like you said, has not wanted to be there for 2 years, and he's made that pretty apparent, and he's still there for whatever reason. I mean, this roster is bad, man. The Kings, This is honestly an oversight on my part. I probably should have had De'Aaron Fox on here. I had him as an all-star this year, regardless of all-star selection, regardless of alternates, all that crap. I had him in the all-star team from our teams that we did a couple months ago. I had him there. This is an oversight on my part. I probably should have had De'Aaron Fox on this list.
It's okay. I'm glad one of us brought him up. I always say, though, Matt can never overcome bad ownership. Vivek Ranadive, not the best owner in basketball. Let's just say that.
Nope.
He's made some very poor decisions on his end. But I did give my number 2 in Zach LaVine, and you had him on your list as well. So let's hear what your number 2 is.
So this one might be controversial as well, and this might be one that you raise your eyebrows at a bit. But I'm going to go with Luka Doncic. Kristaps Porzingis is a great running mate with Doncic when he actually plays. Outside of Tingis, this team really struggles to play defense both on the perimeter and in the paint. They are about as inconsistent of an outside shooting team as there is, including Luka Doncic. The big men on this team are skinny and get bullied by pretty much any competent big man on another team. They aren't even strapped for cash yet, which, Luka hasn't been given his ungodly large contract extension yet, which I'm assuming he's going to get sometime soon.
Yeah,
They got to go get someone to help him out, man. I don't care who it is, just any player that can help him out. Go slot alongside Porzingis and Luka Doncic. They need the help. Porzingis is inconsistent with staying on the floor. Luka needs help.
Just because of all the All-NBA accolades and stuff, Luka might be eligible to be the highest paid player in NBA history, I think, off that contract.
Mm-hmm.
Don't quote me on that, but he'll definitely probably have the highest second contract in NBA history because he's going to be eligible for so much money. So yeah, that's a good point. Dallas, the clock's ticking. Not that he's going to leave, but you got to start building a team around this guy. It's kind of like we talk about rookie NFL quarterbacks who are absolutely.
Yep, exactly. I was going to say that.
Gotta put the team around him before you gotta pay him. That's how it goes. Although the NBA's got a little bit of a softer cap and things like that. But that's a good point, Matt. I definitely think that's interesting. I don't know if I'd put him top 5 just because I think the other guys are in worse spots. But I do think that's a very good argument to make. I'm glad you brought that up.
I just think it's significant because I think them being so close almost makes it worse. You know what I mean? They're just a competent front court away and competent wing shooters away from being among the Western Conference elite because they have that star player in Luka and they have his running mate in Kristaps Porzingis. They just need help.
Yeah. So I'm pretty sure I know who's number 1 on your list. And you're probably wondering who number 1 is on my list, but I'll let you go first. So just say it.
So it's the obvious one. It's Steph Curry. Dude's got literally nothing around him. He's got a washed-up Draymond Green shooting with a backpack on his back and averaging 6 points per game. He's got Maple Jordan, the fraudulent Andrew Wiggins, as his next top point scorer. Kelly Oubre, who is probably the worst replacement for Klay Thompson of all time. And this bench is horrendous. It might even be the worst part of the team. If not for Curry, this team would be fighting with Minnesota and Houston for worst record in the league, like we saw last year when they didn't have Steph Curry because he was hurt. Like you said, good head coach in Steve Kerr, good front office management typically. But in the same respect, you got to give them the blame where they deserve it because Steve Kerr the last 2 years has not been a great coach. I mean, if he's such a good coach as he's brought out to be, they should be better than a 500 team right now. They should not be losing by 40 points on national television at home to the Dallas Mavericks, who I just brought up as the number 2 team on this list. So, and the front office deserves blame too because, like I said, trading for Kelly Oubre has blown up in their faces, passing on LaMelo Ball and drafting James Wiseman, who has not worked out at all so far.
Yeah,
I'm not saying he's not going to work out ever because obviously he's a 19-year-old rookie. He needs some time. But early on, this is looking like a huge, huge mistake for Golden State.
Yeah, all very good points. I'll give Steve Kerr a pass here because I do think that roster is really bad, man. This team sucks. Outside Steph Curry, this roster is bikini bottom bad. Yeah. So we could just leave it at that. Yeah, I mean this team's really bad, man. But we'll see. We'll see if they can put together a championship roster. They've done it before. Maybe they'll get the band back together or something like that once Klay Thompson's healthy. I don't know. That's why I didn't have him 1 on my list. But it's funny because you didn't even list my number 1 guy. That's gonna be Karl-Anthony Towns and the Minnesota Timberwolves. He's got a lot of obstacles to go through, man. This team, they're going through a new ownership regime with A-Rod there, Mark Lure. So maybe things change. The sun, comes in Minnesota, which doesn't happen very often, I don't believe. And maybe they do win some more games and stuff. But Karl-Anthony Towns made the playoffs once in his career, got absolutely embarrassed by Clint Capella. And the only reason they made the playoffs was because Jimmy Butler was on the team. He's had draft bust after draft bust and Andrew Wiggins. They trade freaking Zach LaVine, which that didn't turn out very good. And then also, too, like, this team's just bad. This is one of the worst franchises in the NBA. I can't see him trading Karl-Anthony Towns anytime soon. They get this boy D'Angelo Russell to make him feel better. They have talent on that team, but somehow they still can't win games. It just doesn't make sense. I actually think that out of all these guys, he's the hardest one to, like, he has the most to work up against. And that's why I think he's in the worst spot in the NBA for any star player right now.
This is tough because him being on this list and him being number one is definitely justifiable. But in my opinion, the reason I didn't put him on this list is because I don't consider him a star player. You know, I don't consider him the star player of the other people I have on this list: Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Zach LaVine, Bradley Beal, Julius Randle.
I can't argue that. Like, those guys are obviously better players.
I think they're all better players than Karl-Anthony Towns. And I think, you know, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And, you know, honestly, without Jimmy Butler there, like you said, Karl-Anthony Towns has not gotten this team anywhere near competence. Like, if he's as good of a player as you say he is, and if he's as good of a player as the media makes him out to be, why is this team winning 18 games every year? And I understand he has no help. I understand that this team sucks. The coaching has sucked. The front office sucks. The ownership is booty cheeks. But Karl-Anthony Towns, in the same respect, I don't think he's in the star realm as some of these other guys on my list, and that's the reason I left him off.
And maybe that's fair. I can't really I'm not going to argue he's better than any of those guys. I'm not. But I don't know. I would like to see him on a winning team, see how he does, because I think he's extremely talented and has all the skill in the world and does put up numbers, but of course it's empty numbers. And I do think that he has not been given, like, the right team around him at all. No, I mean, and you can't forget how good Jimmy Butler is either. Like, losing him's a huge loss for any team. You saw it with the Bulls, you saw it with the Timberwolves, saw it with the Sixers even. I mean, they're still good, but it took them a while to recover from that. So, yeah, I just think that he's in a really awful spot, and it's one that out of all these teams, I have the least optimism in.
Oh, definitely least optimism. They seems like they have no direction. I mean, they're similar to Sacramento in the fact that they have, you know, they've been in the lottery pretty much every year and they've done nothing with it. And Karl-Anthony Towns and De'Aaron Fox are pretty much the only dudes that have been drafted out of those teams that have been worth anything in terms of the lottery. So, I mean, this team is stuck in purgatory. There's no doubt about that. I don't know where they go from here. I don't know where Karl-Anthony Towns goes from here. If I was him, I would request a trade. I would get the heck out of there, no doubt. But it might be tough with that contract. So I don't know. I don't know where Minnesota goes from here. I really don't.
I think a lot of teams would want him personally. He's only like 24, 25 years old, and he's extremely talented. Teams have wanted him. It's just they won't trade him. So I don't really know like where he's gonna go. But anyways, though, it's weird. We've always talked about the Timberwolves a lot these last couple podcasts. I don't know why. But we're gonna give our All NBA team for one final time here. It's going to be our All-NBA Ball Don't Lie moments here. So we each, again, didn't tell each other. So it'll be funny if we have some repeating ones. We might. But we're each going to give 5 of our most memorable moments regarding this podcast. It's been a hell of a run, of course. Matt, what is the first one on your list?
So the first one is probably the most memorable to me. And just because I think a lot of other people have brought it up to me and they've also loved this moment. So my Rudy Gobert rant that has now become synonymous with our Instagram posts. Hunter Y, that one. So Rudy Gobert is just a tree, and I stand by that. While he is fantastic defensively, I'm sorry, but there is a whole other side of the court, and all he does is stand under the basket and catch lobs, which is really easy to do when you're 7-2. But I digress. He should not have been an all-star, and I stand by that too. He was catching lobs in the all-star game from generational talent players and still somehow made it look swaggerless. So I think that's one of my favorite moments on this team, on this and this podcast. It was one of my favorite moments because I just got to rant. But yeah.
Someone just said that they were looking at us right now, but I don't see anybody in the window. No one even knocked. Okay. But anyways, though, yeah, that one also made my list too because at the time, like I thought it was a good segment. Obviously we posted it and stuff, but it really got a lot of traction. You're like, Rudy Gobert stinks. Like you're like, he can't play. Why? Yeah,
nobody wants to watch Rudy Gobert in an all-star game.
Yeah, that's true. I can't disagree with you on that one. But the first one on my list is going to be the first show together, which sounds cute and all, but there's a backstory behind it that I'm not sure you remember it or not. But what happened was, because this is when we used to do it in the audio booths back in the day, what happened is that the first time I ever did this, I never did this otherwise. So the computers at Innovation Park, once you log into them, and you have to export your stuff right away because it does not save on that computer. And I think we had to like cut because those mics always be going out and stuff like that. Remember that? Yeah, that used to be rough. I hated it. And we had to call Stephen to fix it. It was a mess. But yeah, so I was an idiot and only exported half the podcast. And then we had to go and do it again.
Oh my God, I
was so
forgot.
freaking mad. I'm like, oh my God, Matt's never gonna want to do it again.
Forgot about that.
And I will say though, and I don't think I've ever told you this, but the fact that you were just like, all right, let's do it again and things like that. It was at that moment I knew. I'm like, this is the one. This is the David Green replacement, the disciple, the chosen one himself, straight out of Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Because we didn't know each other all that well then. You just joined the club, so I was like, this is the one. Because I was looking for someone, I couldn't find it. I knew it from that moment. You were the one.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to be the guy. There's no doubt about that. I wanted to be the guy. But yeah, I totally forgot about that, man. I totally forgot about that. But yeah, I guess my willingness just to be like, yeah, let's do it again is because I hate when things aren't finished. It bothers me so much when I don't finish things, especially when I start them. So I was just like, yeah, we got to go finish it. And honestly, at that time, I probably wasn't too busy, so it's okay. And honestly, I was trying to make an impression for you and everybody else in PSSN too, that I was here to get stuff done. So.
Yeah, I thought like I don't think I ever told you that, but like that's I knew at that moment I was like, that's the one. And I remember this didn't make my list, but I remember like I think it was the week before our final week of school that year, and I think we maybe did the podcast later on in the week. But I think we pushed it back because both of us were like, hey, like I think we were maybe leaving early or something, like not like on Friday or Saturday, maybe earlier. So we pushed the podcast earlier in the week so we can get it done and things like that before the pandemic. Who would have known? But I also think that also spoke to our like we're taking this thing seriously. Like this is not a joke. Like we're putting in that work. So like there was like moments like that where I knew like you were the right one, Matt. It was a match.
Yeah, it was definitely a match made in heaven. Best duo. I would challenge Logan and Chris to have a sentimental moment like that.
Yeah. We might have to have a special. Hey, you want to come in? All right. Hey, Evan Lasik, everybody.
No way. Guys, we love Evan Lasik here on the podcast.
Yeah, we bring special guests on the podcast right here. Evan Lasik.
Evan Lasik, what's up, buddy?
I doubt any of his takes are going to be nearly as bad as Brooks. So I'm not going to lie about that.
Oh, you got Brooke on the pod?
We did. She walked in just like you did, and she said Tristan Thompson was going to win MVP. It was, unprompted. David Green was unfortunately there too, and it was really embarrassing. It really took our cred, but it was probably great for social media. And right now we're trying to campaign for best duo, best podcast. What are your thoughts on that?
Between you two, I think you should win best duo. I think that's
hell yeah, Evan.
I think that's clear cut. Conroy and Carlos have no idea what your only real competition is Logan and Chris.
Yeah.
Chris. I was just saying that.
Yeah. I did. I voted for them because I didn't want to vote for ourselves. It's a little selfish.
I voted for us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I respect it.
That was actually the only vote I submitted was for best duo.
Yeah, I just didn't. Yeah, I wanted to be, respect the game in itself. Yeah, Brendan and Carlos are not winning this. Not a chance.
We're not giving it to freshmen. No chance. They're gonna stop.
They don't even have a podcast. Like, you get a podcast first, and then you guys can maybe be in this conversation.
The relationship was building right here.
Yeah, I don't think they realized that. Like, oh shoot, I'm losing points. I'm getting a little heated right now about this, but yeah. Yeah, I don't. They don't know. They don't understand that chemistry. They don't pay for a semester.
I'm still stuck on Tristan Thompson for MVP.
Yeah, it was really unprompted. we were very confused. Check out the soundbite on social media, if you will.
That's a painful one.
Yeah. This is the last ever podcast, though, Evan. So this is it. I know we're all seniors over here.
Wow,
so yeah.
Innovation's all gone. You got your signature in there. It'll
yeah. Well, they're tearing this place down, I think, later today. So
you should ask for that plank of wood.
Yeah, it's like
wow, they're taking this place down later today.
I think so.
Students are Friday.
Wow, that's crazy.
But I guess because like they have a class in here after this. Yeah. So
that's wild.
Mm-hmm.
We came back in to do some go over some anchoring stuff. I was sitting at the table at last minute, like reeling.
Yeah. If you guys want anything for the reel, now's the time. We'll run a 3-person shift here and get you all that content you need. But yeah, appreciate having you on, Evan.
Of course, LeBron for MVP. He's gonna come back and drop like 50 straight points in like 10 straight games, man. It's easy.
Still a better take than what Brooke said. So, anyway, Casey's here.
Yeah.
Is Casey want to go on the podcast real quick? Say hi to people. Casey Cummer's here too, everybody. Another senior graduate.
Hello, Casey.
Hello.
Yep. Do you have any hot NBA takes you want to give?
No, not really.
You don't? That's probably for the best. Anyways, though, that might be real best duo over there.
You're so short.
Anyways, though, again, can't make this stuff up. This is unprompted here and ball don't lie. God, where are we even at? I think you're giving number 2 on your list.
Yeah, I'm giving number 2.
All right, go ahead.
All right, so number 2 on my list is all the crap that I've given to Russell Westbrook and Al Horford, and rightfully so. All the slander that I've given them has been deservedly so. Westbrook is a turnover machine and a stat patter, and Al Horford is the most uncoordinated waste of money basketball player I've ever been forced to watch. He single-handedly destroyed the Sixers from the inside and simultaneously ruined my life in the process. A silver lining, though, is that he's part of the reason Brett Brown got fired, and he's definitely the reason that Elton Brand is clipping Daryl Morey's toenails right now.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because one of my favorite ball and line moments was when you named Al Horford, Russell Westbrook, and RJ Barrett your players of the week. Let's not forget you did that one time. I thought that was pretty funny. You were like, I'm on an apology tour right now. I want to apologize all the people I've hurt over the course of this podcast. Really only 3 people. But all I'll say is Russell Westbrook's about to average a triple-double for the 4th time in his career, which is
stat pattern.
It is an accomplishment. Got to give the man credit where it's due. RJ Barrett's had a great year. I don't want to hear it otherwise. And Al Horford, okay, you might – that one I can't agree with at all, nor have I really ever. So that one I'm going to leave B. I'm going to leave that one B. But I remember because, again, we don't really tell each other our players of the week. When you were like, I'm on an apology tour, I was dying.
Yeah, because that was during the offseason. That was like during that 1 month between the bubble and between when the season started. So we didn't have much to talk about, and we didn't have obviously any players of the week to give. So it's just like time for trying to make up for my comeuppance here. Time to apologize to these guys if they ever listen to this. So
you know they listen. I don't know if the apology was making it correctly or not, but they listen. We know.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, though, Matt, what else for you?
So number 3 on my list, this is probably one of my favorite ones because it's probably the only time we've ever gotten actually remotely heated each other. And there was the Chris Paul debate that we had. Yeah. I was adamant that Chris Paul going to the Knicks didn't make sense for the Knicks or Chris Paul. And you were adamant that it was definitely a move they needed to make. Honestly, probably, like I said, our most heated debate where we both stayed true to our opinions no matter what the other one said. We usually tend to agree with each other on a lot, which I'm surprised about. But this was one thing we didn't agree on. I will now admit that I was wrong and you were right. Chris Paul is exactly what the Knicks are missing right now. I'll give you that. I was wrong in November, October, whenever that was. I was wrong. Chris Paul going to the Knicks makes sense now, but obviously none of us saw the Knicks being as good as they are now, so whatever.
Told you. That's all I'm saying. I made a whole segment in the summer about why they should have traded for Chris Paul. Let's just say I think they could definitely use a Chris Paul there right now too. They got a good thing going, but Chris Paul, he makes teams winners. Always has. Next on my list though was actually something that kind of just happened when Brooke came on the podcast. Me for great content. We had David Green on, so I was like, all right, a 3-person podcast. We haven't really done that before, but we'll balance it out. We'll make sure everyone eats, everyone does. And I think we actually did a pretty good job with that. We all have pretty good chemistry. Then Brooke comes on and gives me the most whack soundbite this podcast has ever seen. I thought as a joke I'd ask hey, who's going to win MVP? I wasn't expecting. I don't know. I wouldn't know what to expect, but I was just kind of joking around because that's what we were talking about. And then she gave the most wild take and then doubled down on it. But you know what? It's okay. Brooke doesn't really watch basketball, so it's not like she's a self-proclaimed NBA analyst, but it made for great content, and that was probably the funniest soundbite I think we gave all year, in my opinion, at least.
Yeah, man, it was so funny because she's like, "Isn't Tristan Thompson still in the NBA?" And we were like, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, he's probably the best player ever." And we were like, "No," and she's like, "He's still in the Cavs, right?" We were like, "Also no, still no. He's one of the worst players in the Celtics." It was not that
civil though. You were like, "For the love of God!"
I was
why?
Get out. I was like, "Get this girl off our podcast right now, bringing down the viewership." But Yeah,
Chris
that
Allen
was a
even
great
knocked
moment.
on the window. Bro just walked in. Like I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Brooke just
oh,
said, "What's up, guys?
there've been
Rev
so
up
many
those
people.
fryers."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
It was definitely a great moment. It's a shame it happened so recently, but fantastic moment. Well, one of those things I'll definitely remember for a while. It was pretty funny.
Yeah, that one definitely holds a special place. But she did campaign for best duo for us too, so more people going. We gotta win at least duo or podcast. If we win both,
Yeah.
that's the goal. If we win at least one, though, I'll be like, okay, at least the people had enough common sense to know we are the best podcast. So
Yeah, I just want a clean sweep, man. That's what I want.
clean sweep.
How could you win? How could you win best podcast and not win best duo? Make this my statement. How could you win best podcast but not win best duo? That's my statement about that. But
Well, I know a podcast you're also on because you like doing that. Bad Things in Philadelphia, which is a couple people. Or was it how much? Like 5 of you, 6 of you?
yeah, 5 of us.
5 of it. Okay, so that one's like a group. So I don't know if you guys are gonna juice up the votes or not. I know you didn't vote that way, right? So
Mm-mm.
yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I think we'll definitely win that. There's no way.
Yeah, I mean we've been around too long, man.
No,
I
man.
mean Chris and Logan have their cute little baseball podcast that I've also been on, but they haven't put the time in, man. They haven't put the time in.
They
We
put that
started
work in.
this.
Yeah,
This is
months.
ours.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't got 46 podcasts. I don't even think they got like that.
Amen.
So don't worry, they'll do their thing. Shout out Logan and Chris. They are terrific men. We love them. But yeah, so let the best one win. We'll just say that. Anyways though, I think was I the last one to give one with Brooke?
Yeah, so I'm
Okay,
giving
go
my
ahead.
fourth one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so shout out to Logan and Chris. They have a great podcast together. I'm not bashing them. They're a great duo, obviously. But the one thing they do not have is they don't have the great sound bites that we have. And this was one of them, the hoagie debate. I still can't believe you had the nerve to call a hoagie a hero. I understand you not jumping on the Philly. No, let me finish. I said, I understand you not jumping on the Philly slang and calling it a hoagie. I understand you even calling it a sub. But a hero? What the hell is even that?
Bruh, you're not from New York. That's why.
Oh my God. Nobody calls it a hero except for like maybe like a strip of Long Island. Nobody calls it that.
No, I'm telling you, bro.
You also said that you would call it a
Metro
sandwich.
area, 100%.
Oh my dude. So you also said that you would call a hoagie a sandwich, which on paper seemed legit, I guess, but it just still makes me cringe a little bit for whatever reason. I just don't think a hoagie, like that kind of sandwich, it's not you don't just call it a sandwich.
No, I think it's fair. I was just trying to say I wasn't really at the time thinking hero. I was just like, I don't know, I guess a sandwich.
Hero.
I think that was during I think we were locked out. I think you might have been in the queue at that point.
No, that was I looked at this today because I saw it on Instagram.
Okay.
I was looking back to see what you said because I knew it was ridiculous. It was October 7th. So I think it was one of those times we got locked out of the studio. Yeah.
I wonder why we weren't there then. Interesting.
Yeah.
Because I remember I don't think we were in here.
Maybe you got exposed. Maybe isn't that when LASIK got COVID? It might have been then.
It might have been, bro. I don't remember, man. I mean, I never got it, thank God. But yeah, it was around that time, I think. So that might have been why. I might have been the one in the queue. So yeah, no COVID here. But yeah, that actually did make my list because I feel like we changed the game with that because then we started doing it for segments too. Which I mean, I get like, part of that is like kind of on me. I'm a producer and stuff, but like once we did it that first time and like how much like social media attention we got from it, I'm like, we got to keep doing this, not only for Ball Don't Lie, but we got to keep doing it for segments too. Cause that's what the people want. They want to see what we're talking about. They want to listen to what we're talking about. They just don't want to see like a picture or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it kind of gave, people, an in-depth look at like maybe what our personalities were and how they mesh together and how like even on a basketball podcast we're not talking about basketball all the time. Sometimes we're bringing up like the way I say water or the way we talk about sandwiches. Like we talked about sandwiches for 5 minutes. Like you talk about football sometimes. Like it's we talk about social, so we talk about like everything. It's not just basketball, and it's something I've seen too in watching the Inside the NBA documentary too, where they're so good at talking about basketball, but they're also so good at making it fun to talk about basketball. Like people that don't even watch basketball can watch their show and still be entertained and still have fun. And I think that's kind of the goal of anybody in sports, to be entertaining enough to not only have the attention of sports watchers and sports listeners, but also just regular people too who don't, aren't that interested in sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talk about the Rudy Gobert soundbite, shout out Hope Burley, my fellow producer for PSN News. She does not watch a lick of sports at all, but she said that's still one of the funniest things she's ever watched. So, that's what we do, Matt. We educate. We try to give people what they want basketball-wise and things like that. But we put on a show. We entertain. That's always been my motto with anything I broadcast. So, yeah.
Yeah, and just always looking to entertain, like I said. And, I think we've both done a pretty good job of that.
Yeah, and that's why we should win Best Podcast and Best Duo this year. But just keep plugging that in there one time. All right, I'll let you go next because I technically gave all mine, but if you don't say this one, I'm going to bring it up because it's also another one that's in my head, so I want to hear if you do that, though.
Okay, so the last one I have is Woj bombs during the show and when I sound the alarms. So the main one I remember reacting to is Daryl Morey coming to Philly and me being mid-talking point, and you had to interrupt me because you knew how I'd react. I instinctively started singing the NBA on NBC theme song from the 90s for some odd reason, and then I played the Woj bomb music, and then another one I distinctly remember is LeBron getting his contract extension and us immediately discussing how it would line up with Bronny's draft eligibility, and I think that was another one of our Instagram soundbites.
That was a soundbite too, yeah. We were like, oh God, wait, can he still team up with Bronny?
And it lined up
first
perfectly.
thing we thought of, like, oh no, like my son.
Yep.
Oh my God, what was I gonna say? Oh shoot. All right, I was gonna ask you now that you brought up the Woj bomb thing. Can you play that? Do it one more time. I know there's no Woj bombs, but get on your phone. Because that was always funny. And I love the elbow scene too with his elbows on. And it's just like bombs.
It's my favorite meme ever. I see it on Twitter all the time whenever Woj tweets something. Right, Hope?
Yeah.
Look, his little face is there too.
Slowly fades in. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's classic.
Oh my God. All right. So the next one I'm gonna bring up. Well, I guess it's an all ball don't lie moment because it just really showed that we were always going to get the job done by any means necessary. That who shall not be named was in this studio when I walked in. And I was like, that's interesting. We're always in here at 11:30 every single Wednesday this semester. No one ever seems to be in here. The door's usually actually locked. I usually have to unlock it myself. But there was someone in here and they were like, well, we reserve this room. And I was like, well, that's not true. We're always in here every Wednesday. And then I texted you. I'm like, someone's in here right now. And I think I'm just got to do this in the storage closet or something. You can see it out there. And so we did a whole podcast where I am in a storage closet. And then you were still there. So I was only probably 50 feet away. But, it just kind of showed that no matter what, by any means necessary, we are going to get it done because no team gets left behind. No podcast running mate gets left behind. No podcast ever gets left behind every week either.
Yeah, thou who shall not be named. That was that's the first and only time that has happened. This in a year and a half of doing this podcast, it's the first and only time that has ever happened. I mean, we've been kicked out of the audio room before because there's just been classes in there, and that's the reason we've been on Zoom pretty much this entire year. But that was wild. And something else that the people probably definitely don't know is that right after that podcast, I think we got done at 12:58. The second we got done, you were like, hold on, I got an interview call at 1:00. And you did your interview call also from the storage closet.
Yeah,
so that dedication from you to just sit in a storage closet for an hour and a half doing the podcast and then doing something cool too. So
yeah, that was wild because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna miss this. And it was 12:58. I'm like, oh my God, and that was a good
perfect
episode.
timing.
I think I remember that being a pretty good one. So yeah, we always got the job done, man. So I guess that's gonna wrap up our list here for the final time. Me and Matt would be going off to greener pastures, perhaps going off to college. Matt, I'll give you the floor. Any words of anything?
Yeah, Hunter, I just want to say thank you, man. You brought me to PSSN as a youngin. Well, I guess I wasn't really that young. I was it was last year, but obviously I didn't have much experience with broadcasting and I didn't have much experience with podcasts at all. I knew it was something I wanted to do, but I just didn't know how to get into it, how to get my foot in the door. And you saw my quite frankly awful audition where I mixed up the word duck with another profane word. So you saw that and you said, yeah, I need that guy. So shout out to you. Thank you for bringing me on, and thank you for bringing me on the podcast too. I knew that was a leap of faith for you because, again, at that time, you barely knew me. And the only reason you brought me on the podcast is because we did an NBA segment together and you're like, hey, he kind of knows what he's talking about. So this was thank you. And I thank you for keeping me on this long and, having this podcast run the entire year. It's impressive for both of us. And I'm just really proud of both of us. And I think, I've said this to you before in private, but I truly believe that PSSN would not be where it is today without you. And you really, dedicated yourself to this, and I'm proud of you, and I'm proud of, what this club has become.
Yeah, Matt. I mean, you were one of those people that were here, even though you only joined, in the spring of last year. You were still here before the pandemic and after. So you have seen the club grow a lot, despite the fact that you weren't even there that long, because you were only there really only half the semester. Like really get down to it, at least in person. Yeah, I guess I'll take the tune from start to finish here. I remember when I first got my producer spot officially, entering junior year, I was just coming up with ways to try to change the game because that's always what I wanted to do. I wanted to, leave a legacy or whatever that may be, things of that nature. And I was trying to think of ways to, like, what can I really do to like change something? Like, I want to introduce something that's never been done before. And I remember I'm in the gym, I'm working out, putting up them weights, New York Sports Club. And I'm like, podcasts. That's the move. Because at the time, I'm working at Panera Bread, and I'm a delivery driver. So I'm in the car nonstop. So I'm constantly listening to, like, albums, podcasts, like, everything. And, like, I just kept listening to a lot of sports podcasts. I was listening to a lot of fantasy football podcasts, trying to make sure my team was right and things like that. And I was like, it's funny because, like, at this time, I mean, I know Com Radio does, like, their kind of podcast thing, and they got the radio shows. And no one was really doing like full length podcasts, at least the sports clubs here at Penn State. And I was like, that's the idea. And I'm not going to lie to you, it got shut down at first. The producers really were not a fan of it and things like that. Not to call them out. But they thought I was ridiculous and things like that. Because at the time, podcasting was growing, but it wasn't really like lit yet like it is now. So I was just like, I'm telling you, this is what's going to change the game is if we start doing podcasts. And so me and David Green, of course, my dear friend, I was kind of more specifically wanted to do it with him because we always talked about like, oh, we should always have a podcast. That'd be hilarious. And then I'm like, and then Ball Don't Lie came about. One, I still think that's a super hard name for a podcast. I like that. That's a nice name, bro. Giant Manziel might be trying to take it, but the Ball Don't Lie stay here at Penn State Sports Night. And then me and David started doing it and things of that nature. And the thing I always loved about David is just, it was like, since we always knew each other, like it was so natural. It just felt like we were talking, having a conversation like we would off camera. Minus we don't really curse as much on here. That's probably the only main difference. So, and I love about David is that like he really challenged me. He's like, I feel like we just keep doing the same thing every week and stuff like that. So I started to try to think of like, well, what can we do that other things don't? And that's why I started the Player of the Weeks. The all NBA teams just kept sticking. I think we did since episode 1. And like, we literally were like, let's just keep doing a different one every single week. I don't think we ever had repeating all NBA teams and stuff like that. Then the Around the Association was a way to get the breaking news and what people are really excited for. And that's why we always put it first. Got the Players of the Week out. Then we kind of went to a little more in-depth segments, which I kind of started doing the start of the second semester before you even got on because it was just me and I can't debate with myself. So I'm like, I'm going to start doing more deeper dives on things. But then I found out that worked pretty well because a lot of places weren't doing that. They weren't doing deep dives about like why Portland's struggling or why, this player isn't getting the recognition he deserves and things like that. And so then when I got you on, I liked that format, it worked. And obviously, I didn't know you that well at the time. But I knew that you knew a lot about basketball and stuff like that. I could tell that. And at the time, a lot of people in the club really weren't big NBA people. It was just me. It always felt like if there was an NBA segment, I had to be the one on it. So, and David was really the only other one. I know Ryan was on a couple podcasts, but he did like a soccer one too. So I didn't want to overload him a bit. And then, we talked about the first podcast. It was a mess and like things like that. I don't think the podcast itself was bad, but like the way we went about it wasn't the best. Things like that. And I was like, yeah, I think I found the one, my other half. So we're the best duo in Penn State Sports Night this year. So yeah, and then this year, COVID. Thank God we had Zoom, because not only do maybe the audio quality is not as great as it is with the mics, but I think seeing us interact with each other, I do think added something that we didn't have before. And I think it definitely allows us to sound bites better too. And then as a result, other podcasts started picking up too. Now last year there were a couple podcasts that aren't around anymore, but Bad Things in Philadelphia, and you're someone who had all the podcast experience, really helped out with those, and Top Prospects. And I'm sure there's going to be other ones too. So, Ball Don't Lie was definitely like a project they had in podcasting, and I couldn't do it without you or David Green and things of that. And of course this club, because it always just gave me the opportunity to just be myself and carry out things that I've always wanted to do. So I thank you and everybody else for that too.
Yeah, Hunter, like I said, I mean, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done. And I think just your forward thinking, has really taken this club to a new heights. Like you said, like you being the one that suggested podcasting and, originally getting shut down at first and being like, oh, that's a stupid idea. Like we do segments on Mondays, like we don't have to do podcasts. So I think just taking it that extra step, that extra level has really, open the doors for what we can do as a club. And, obviously, like you said, there's other podcasts now. Like we're not the only ones now. And it's that forward thinking that has made this club what it is and made it so much better than what it was even when I joined last spring, when there was maybe like 15 people showing up to PSSN on Monday nights. And now we have like 30 people coming. Even in the COVID year, we have people, waiting in the other rooms just to get in here for a little bit because they want to learn. They want to be on segments. They want to learn studio crew. They want to learn all this stuff. And I think that's just a testament to you and testament to everybody that has really helped this club grow. And this podcast is definitely a part of that. And, we can't thank you enough.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I can honestly walk away knowing that like the club's in great hands. That makes me feel better than like if I walked away and everything just went like, so the fact that we have so many talented kids and stuff like that. We've had seniors like you. Although you weren't a producer, you're definitely a leader of this club. Kids looked up to you. Everyone loved you. And like, and you always were great. And you really came in right away, despite being new, not knowing anyone in the club, and really just made yourself known and, kept getting better. And I mean, look, you went from being like no broadcast experience to being in CCR and things like that too. So, you've come a long way too, Matt. I'm glad we found you. Everyone has their own unique Penn State Sports Night story. And I think that's kind of what makes the club great too.
I think so too. It was a pleasure to be here. It was a pleasure to be, part of PSSN. I said it before and I'll say it again. Joining PSSN was probably the best decision I ever made in my college career. So I'm ecstatic that it worked out so well. Obviously if you had asked me a year and a half ago when I joined, that I would accomplish as much as I did in just a year and a half, I would have told you you're crazy. So, and I think PSSN is just a huge part of that. So, and this podcast is a huge part of that too, having the consistency, doing it every week, getting better, getting more comfortable. I used to just like read off of notes that I made before, like that first podcast. I was so nervous. I was just reading everything I wrote word for word. And now I don't even do that anymore. I just kind of write a couple things down and go from it. So, I've really grown a lot. And it's been an honor to do this with you, have this podcast. It's been great.
Yeah. So shout out to all the fans out there who've been listening since day one and since Matt got here. It's been an honor. This is going to be my second to last broadcasting thing I do. I do have a radio show later today, but this will be the last thing published, so that's going to be an honor. My last sports night thing, really. So we appreciate everybody so much. It's been a great ride. And I know for a fact that all the other sports night kids will kill it next year too. So, bless you all. Have a good rest of your days and things of that nature. And no team gets left behind either, right?
Damn right.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.